Hello, and thank you for joining us. In this video, we're going to complete a drawing of an anvil, and the first step is layout. And the first part of that is to square the paper with the T-square, not to the edge of the paper, but to the borders. They may not be the same. And then we're going to lay out the three views. They ought to align, and the space between the views should be the same, and the space above and below the views to the border should be the same, and the space to the left and to the right of the views to the border should be the same. So we're going to have to do a bit of math, measuring the amount of room we have on the paper and then subtracting the amount of space that the views will take up. So we'll do a bit of math. Subtracting the height of the front view and the depth of the top view gives us 2 3/16 of an inch to work with. Now we need as much room as practicable between the views for dimensioning, which we'll do later. So I'm going to give myself half an inch above and below the views and proceed to make layout lines. These layout lines are drawn very lightly as construction lines, ideally with a very hard pencil, and they're going to tell us where vertically the views go. Now that distance, in this case of 1 inch and 3/16, needs to be constant. So it's time to do a bunch more math. And we'll measure the width of the paper, write that down, and then we'll subtract the length of the two views and the space between views. And as I did before, I will make some light construction lines, and I'm also going to use the papers to verify that I've got everything just right. I will tell you, sometimes I get the math all wrong. It's a bit frustrating, but hooray, that's the kind of result we're looking for. Equal distance above and below, and to the sides, and in between. Yay, me. Here I am drawing those layout lines. Again, very lightly, so we have to do very little erasing, and we're ready to proceed. Now it is time to draw the object proper, and we're going to start with nice, light construction lines. And I hope you'll see how what happens in one view happens in the other views, just differently. So if I find where the angles start in the front view, I can then project over to the side view. You're going to see one of the reasons why, honestly, we draw these very light construction lines, because I made some mistakes with getting the right angle. It's a 45-degree angle. Get it right. All right, so we'll get that, and from that intersection of the angle to the top surface gives us the location of the line in the top view. And again, we'll line it up with the right one. And if we keep our construction lines light enough, we don't really have to do a whole lot of erasing. Okay, ready for the next step. The key to drawing really good object lines is to make them bold, dark, and strong. Muy macho! Drafting such a calm thing, and yet. So we've got the layout lines, and as long as we don't overdrive it, as it were, we should be fine. And I got away with it this time. I will confess, there have been times, and when you do in ink, it's a disaster, where I've gone too far too fast, and ooh, now what do I do? So we've got the vertical, and now we're going to do the angled object lines. Right. Now some concerns are potentially to get smearing from the pencil. So it's a good idea to lift up, and I'm doing it very slightly here, but I am doing it, the T-square and also the triangles to minimize smearing. Something I did in college is I had very fine eraser dust, and I'd that over the drawing surface before I worked, so that any graphite, instead of smearing, would get picked up by the erasers. We're going to do a little cleanup, and if I was getting close to those lines, I would definitely be using an eraser shield as I go. Okay, we're ready to dimension, and successful dimension involves following a set of rules. One rule is, as much as possible, put the dimensions in between the views. And if you can possibly avoid it, never put a dimension outside of the object. Another rule is we always dimension to object lines and center lines, never to hidden lines. And sometimes you have to do what's called a breakaway view in order to follow this rule. Now, we're going to be drawing shortly some dimension lines, and these numbers are the actual dimensions. The dimension line will marry up with them. The first dimension line from an object should be 1/2 inch away, and then every subsequent one should be 3/8. So the first one would be 1/2 an inch, the next one would be 7/8, and then 1.25 inches. I don't have enough space, I gotta fudge it, so these are all gonna be about 3/8 of an inch away from the object and then from each other. Okay. Another rule we need to follow is we have enough dimensions that the person making this doesn't have to add or subtract, but we have no dimensions beyond that. So enough, but no extra. Machinists, tool and die makers are typically very good at math, but they cost a lot of money per hour, so don't be wasting their time and the company's money making them do math. Likewise, carpenters and woodworkers tend to be very good at the mathematics they need to do, but again, don't make them do work on the site that you don't need them to do. Okay, I'm now going to draw an extension line. This doesn't quite touch, about 1/8 of an inch away from the object line. It's not quite as strong as an object line. Now I'm drawing some dimension lines. They're also lighter, thinner. Okay. And you can see they're about 3/8 of an inch apart. We have a couple more extension lines. All right. And now I'm drawing some dimension lines. And you may have noticed as I wrote the numbers, I always wrote sort of down, pulling the pencil towards myself. When I made an A, I didn't make 2 loops. I made basically a backwards 3 and then a regular 3, if you follow the line. It gets much tighter, which is really important. See these dimension arrows? They should be sharp and pointy, stabby, stabby, not big spoon-like things or caveman arrows, okay? Very important. If you're doing architecture, you're actually allowed to be a bit creative with these things. But for machinist work and the like, no, no, no. Pointy, pointy. Thank you very much. Okay, time to grade my work. And the thing to understand about drafting is it's a loser's game. And it doesn't mean that you're a loser to play it. It means there's an ideal drawing and then there are mistakes. So as I look at my neatness, I can say, some of these object lines went a little too far, the corners aren't crisp. How complete is it? Well, I didn't miss anything, so we're good to go there. The alignment's a little weak to my standards. Some of the lines don't line up as perfectly as I would like, so we're going to go with that. And then the average turns out to be, I got to do some math in my head here. Again, when you do dimensioning, don't make people do math. It's a 90%. Okay, better luck next time.